Hi, Christine. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on our show and for being our Woman on the Move for October.
Thanks for having me.
During your time in college at the University of Minnesota with your bachelor's in journalism and your associates in Spanish, what was your motivation behind that?
I love that you know that, one. Great researching. And two, I wasn't sure when I first went to college if I definitely wanted to be a journalist. There were so many other things I was looking at, and then I just still fell back into journalism. And Spanish, I just wanted to really feel more comfortable knowing another language, feeling like I could speak to a whole other population. I felt like that was just really important.
How was that transition from college to internships and then kind of finding your way into your career?
I think my most valuable internship was working at a TV news station called KARE 11. I shadowed a bunch of journalists in the field and so enjoyed it. And they actually ended up hiring me in my first job out of school to be an assistant reporter in the Capitol. So I was covering the legislative session. I went from Minnesota working that job, and I was applying actually to be a reporter in a real TV news market somewhere. I wanted to be on air. I wanted to be producing news stories, and getting that first job working as an on-air reporter somewhere was like, I had so much anxiety around it. I was like, is this going to happen for me? There were so many people who were saying this is such a hard thing to do. And I ended up applying to a number of stations in Augusta, Georgia, because that's also where my boyfriend happened to be working at the time. And while I was visiting him, his news director happened to come in. It was a weekend shift, and he was working to produce a beauty pageant. So he was just there, and I was just there, and I was just like, hey, let's chat. And so I ended up showing him my resume tape, and he ended up being the person to offer me a job before I even finished my internship. And I actually was hired by that news director as a temporary reporter. So I was filling in someone else's space while they were on break. So there was a lot of pressure on me to really measure up, because they were going to have the option to let me go. So as you might imagine, like, that wasn't a really great place for me to be in with my first job. I was really under a lot of pressure, and I was nervous. And then a week after I actually got that position and everything was signed, the station was sold to another station, and then everyone had to reapply for their jobs. So I had to go into a whole new round of interviews, and I ended up getting rehired. And so most contracts are about 2 years, but that's why I was there for 2.5 years, was because I ended up getting rehired after my first 6 months by another station.
So how did you deal with the pressure of all of that?
There's only one thing you have control over, and it's yourself and your attitude and your outlook. I have no control over that reporter or this news director or that person. I have literally what they want to do with their life. That's on them. I have no control over that, but I do have control over me and how hard I work at something, the kind of relationships I make, the way I treat people, the respect I have for other people, all of those things I can control. So I just focused on me and what I could do to stay focused on what I wanted to accomplish with my life.
Awesome story. I really have loved listening to you and just really hearing that advice. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your job and your work at the moment? Heather was saying, Bright Side of Media. I know that you have your own podcast and you kind of coach. So tell us a little bit about that.
I really wanted to help people communicate better with other people using the internet, which can be really hard. And so at first it started off as, media coaching or working with people on, their social media videos, just little things here and there. We ended up producing one of the top podcasts worldwide in health and wellness, which was really exciting. I think it was number 4 on the charts. So yeah, that's how I found podcasting, and then via referrals, I started getting other clients while working at that marketing company. And I was like, hey, you know what? I can't do both. Maybe, just maybe I can do this on my own. Let's see if it works. And so that's what happened.
That's really an interesting story to see how that kind of all came together and it came along perfectly. And so how have you personally grown throughout the whole growth of, your work, of your podcast?
I've learned to trust data a lot more than I ever did working as a journalist. I started looking at the big picture as a business owner, where, the end of the line stops with me instead of, these little tiny, they're not tiny things when they're happening to you, but to just be like, wait, what's the big picture? When this bad thing happens, what's the big picture? What does this mean long term?
You have definitely have a lot of experiences, a lot of stories to tell, and that all builds together and it helps kind of form that character that you're talking about. You did speak a little bit about it, but obstacles that you faced, things that were really hard in your whole journey.
I think one of the biggest obstacles that I faced as a journalist was getting fired from a TV news station for a social media post that I did that was taken out of context by an industry blogger, and he turned it into a really salacious and sensational thing that just wasn't true, and it got me fired. First, I couldn't believe it. Then I was really angry. And then I think I blacked out and then I started crying. So that I would say was one of the biggest and hardest things that I dealt with as a journalist, because that really impacted my career and is one of the reasons I shifted from working in TV news to working in marketing.
Like you were saying, that was definitely probably one of the biggest hits you had throughout your career experience, but at the same time, I'm sure it kind of pushed you into a different direction, and it, like you said, it brought out other good things, eventually. What would you say is your biggest reward or some highlights?
I think recently I have seen a lot of growth with my business, and that has been really rewarding. It's this new confidence that I'm wow, I did this. But we're going to just keep plugging along and working towards, providing stories for people that make a real difference in their lives, that really impact them through podcasting. And we're going to coach other people who have a story that they've wanted to tell, but have been too scared to, or they're not sure if they have the right words and they're not sure about the process. Maybe it's overwhelming to them. But that's been really rewarding for me, also seeing my clients have so much success.
What does being a woman on the move mean to you?
Being a woman on the move means being someone who is constantly moving in a forward direction. Being someone who sees a brighter future for themselves and then goes after it and brings people along with them. I'm Christine O'Donnell, and I'm your Woman on the Move for the month of October.